Nikhilesh Sinha. I'm doing a PhD at University College London at the Bartlett Development Planning Unit. And my PhD essentially focuses on rental housing in informal settlements, and my focus, my site of study is Hyderabad. I'm looking at a comparison between rental practices in the old city and new city of Hyderabad. But I have spent time in 2 or 3 different sectors. I spent about 2 years working in a television company, ET Now, Economic Times Now. And after that I was at the Indian School of Business. I was heading research in affordable housing and urbanization at the Center for Emerging Market Solutions. My association with HUL came about almost accidentally, but there are people in the city of Hyderabad who are engaged with interesting work, and it's been my good fortune to run into some of these luminaries, and one of them is Usrama, who started the Dastakar Andhra Marketing Association, or DAMA as it's called, which used to be a part of Dastakar, Central Dastakar unit, but then became a separate unit of its own. And Usrama recommended, I've known her for many years, but when she heard about my PhD, she recommended that I meet Anand. As happens, I met Anand and learnt about the work that HUL was doing. And I realized that firstly, it's work that is quite unique, and specifically for this city, it's work that is sorely needed, and it's fantastic that Hyderabad Urban Labs has taken it up. It requires a certain approach, it requires a certain kind of disciplinary background, but also an openness to be able to engage with different kinds of actors, engage with different kinds of methodologies. And so I was very excited when I heard about what Hyderabad Urban Labs is doing. Sitting in London, part of the idea of the Development Planning Unit is to engage with different disciplines and different geographies and different methodologies. And I found this is one of the few places where what we've been talking about theoretically is actually being carried out in practice. I'm fortunate to also be associated with the Indian Institute of Human Settlements, because my fieldwork in India is being funded through the Urban Knowledge Network Asia project, of which IIHS is a partner, and Dr. Gautam Han is my sort of mentor at IIHS through this program. And it's fantastic that HUL and IIHS now have a synergy, just as the Development Planning Unit and IIHS have a synergy. The more that organizations that are working on similar areas, even if their approaches are different, the more that conversation happens, the richer the research, the conversation, the dialogue, and the potential impact of any programs that come out of those dialogues are likely to be.
What do you feel about HUL's work in the terms of your opinion, basically your opinion in methodology and its culture of work?
So I find HUL very interesting on 2 scales. One is, of course, to do with interdisciplinarity in terms of the methodologies that are used. So there is an attention to data which is collected through sort of statistical and through quantitative kinds of methodologies, as well as data that is collected through life histories, through qualitative forms. There's a great need to marry these two and to look at insights that come from the 2 of them for several reasons. One is to do with the paucity and the dearth of actual quantitative data and its availability. But secondly, and more importantly, there are stories within the data that you will never understand by purely looking at it statistically. This comes from a different sort of ontological and epistemological position. But there is a great need to be able to look at these different points of view in order to come up with anything that is going to be even vaguely successful. And if you cannot engage with a system from the point of view of the people who you are trying to help, then that attempt has virtually no meaning. So we move to a stage where it is only through participatory methods that we actually find the possibility of success. That doesn't guarantee success, but it is sort of the first step towards achieving that kind of success. Just to sort of get back to HUL a little bit, Anant is a geographer, but he's unique in his ability to be able to engage both with the slum dweller as well as with the academic, and at a different level with policymakers and other people in different fields. So that kind of approach, which allows you to inhabit different kinds of spaces, that's what HUL represents, and that's what every researcher at HUL is really trying to mold themselves on, and that's, for me, I think, the future of urban research. I think in my understanding of research, certainly with the PhD, the focus on the subject and the focus on the specific theme of the PhD is sacrosanct, and it's important to keep that separate from any other work that you're doing. So as far as the PhD is concerned, my research question, although it has been influenced by things that have happened in the field, and I have learned from methodologies that I have seen being practiced through HUL, my PhD work remains a separate unit, although it is informed by things that are going on at UCL. The way that at HUL, sorry, the way that I engage with work at HUL is to look at the synergies and methodologies and the synergies in subject, and to learn from that, but also to share my learnings through my research and through my reading with young researchers as well as other people at HUL.
How do you feel HUL's contribution to urban studies and city itself?
I think what's going on at HUL is a very exciting experiment. It is probably the only research unit of its kind. HUL is still trying to define itself within that space, not just in terms of the actual space that it's engaging in, but also its identity within that space. And that's a really interesting conversation that is going on within HUL as well as with other stakeholders around HUL. And I think that experiment is as exciting as the research. So one is what is happening through the different kinds of methodologies that are being created in HUL. The hope is that these methodologies will then begin to travel. So once HUL has created a set of tools for urban researchers, this can then travel through either through people who've worked here, or maybe also through series of case studies, etc., through which it can be disseminated within the academic community. There are different levels at which HUL is trying to engage with the city, and I think from a research perspective, this is really an exciting part of it. The other aspect of HUL is the structure of the organization itself, and in this particular political climate, to find a suitable and stable way of defining itself, which can allow it to continue doing this kind of work, and then questions of scale, questions of how HUL is going to grow and how its vision might adapt and change in the coming years. That in itself is a very exciting part of HUL's journey. So it's the institutional design as well as the actual research that I think are quite fascinating and quite laudable in the case of HUL.
What is your role and your contribution as a fellow in HUL?
When I came to Hyderabad, the way in which the UKNA, the Urban Knowledge Network Asia Fellowship works, the funding body that has awarded me money to come and do my field work, it was necessary for me to find a partner in Hyderabad, and because IIHS is my home institution in India, but it's in Bangalore, whereas my research was in Hyderabad. I had worked at the Indian School of Business, and so I had initially set up, I had a fellowship at the Indian School of Business. But once I came to learn of HUL and its activities, and I met Dr. Nant Maranganti, and I met the other individuals associated with HUL, I realized that this was a much more conducive environment for me to place myself in. And so that was essentially how I entered HUL. So I benefited immensely from the generosity of people at HUL in giving me space, a desk to sit in, as well as to allow me to learn along with other people here about the methodologies and also to contribute. So the fellowship, I think, came about as a realization on HUL's part and my part that there was a need for some kind of formalization of this relationship in order that I may then be able to take HUL's work beyond sort of Hyderabad and beyond India, since I am currently based in the UK. I felt that being able to create those kinds of international opportunities for dialogue would help not just HUL, but also to help researchers in other places who are trying to understand similar kinds of problems. And so the fellowship is really a conduit for engagement, and that's how I would characterize it. There's a certain thing that happens when you engage with a group of people and with an idea, and when you find that this same idea is kind of being born in many people's heads, and then it's coming together, or various people have been searching for something and then they realize that this idea has been envisioned by somebody, and then that becomes a place for them to come together. I think that's what HUL represents, which is that there are several people who've been working on urban issues, who have been looking for the right approach, or at least a place that will allow them to develop different kinds of approaches, and that's what HUL has come to represent. And therefore, for me, it was an extremely exciting discovery to find that HUL exists and to find out the work they're doing. The exciting thing about this project is it is not any longer about the entity. It is about that idea, and it is about the way that that idea is going to travel. And so, in a sense, the hope is that anyone who has spent a significant portion of time in HUL, be it 3 months or 6 months, will leave with a new conception of urban research, with a new set of tools, and with an ability to be able to take that to different geographies. And that is really the excitement and the potential of HUL.